appreciate you guys tuning in this morning. Of course, you guys being here, I appreciate that. I'm going to make a few announcements first before we get started on our sermon. So the website, as if you've been on our website lately, you've seen a lot of changes have been on it. I have uploaded all of the audio files that we currently have on hand of Pastor Emery that have been remastered. I'm currently working on uploading all of his audio in their original formats. Right now, I think I'm on 1970. So just to let you know, I know the website all the audio isn't there yet, but it is on its way. All of Pastor Emery's videos, which we only have 7, are actually on there now. So look out for those. I've also got Pastor Barley's, all of his audio that we have right now is on there, as well as my audio and video. Some people want just the audio, so it's all available online. I do know that when you give tithes or offerings on the website, that the landing page for the thank you is coming up with a page 404 error. Okay, I found that out this week. I watched somebody do it, and yeah, it is actually the thank you page that's not loading after you get tithe. So the transaction goes through. The landing page for the thank you is what's wrong. Now, I've looked at the code. I have the landing page for the bookstore fixed, the thank you page. But the thank you page for the tithes campaign is hidden somewhere. So I haven't fixed it yet, but I'm trying to track that down, just so you know. And as you know, in our bookstore are duplicate books that are for sale. We are constantly adding to those, so keep looking at those. We're currently working through the whole list to get everything uploaded. So those are constantly being added to every day. And starting perhaps by the end of this month, we have over 1,000 to 1,100 duplicate pamphlets that we're going to start putting onto the bookstore as well. So that'll be another big project. So that's still a work in progress, but it will be on there. So keep a lookout for that. And I noticed also that some of you had asked questions last week. After the live sermon, and I leave the church, and I upload the actual sermon, I will delete the live stream that you can repeat, that you can play over again. You can play back the live stream, I know. I take that live stream down, and I replace it with the final copy of the sermon that we actually burned to DVD, and we use that to rip audio from. So if you're on there and the live disappears, just wait probably an hour. I do it right before I put the other one up. The final copy will be available. So you haven't lost this sermon. It just shows up a little bit later. So I'm sure you guys have figured that out by now. Also, we have, I'm also in the works of getting the church a cell phone. Okay, so we actually we'll have a cellular line, which will be on my personal phone here. So this phone allows me to get 2 SIM cards, and with 2 SIM cards, I get 2 lines. So it'll be like a business line for my personal phone. So I'll be putting that on the website, and I'm also going to, I can link several apps to it as well, so I can check on the website through our accounts. So I get double the accounts on the phone, but we will have a cell phone that you can have voicemails to. It'll be a direct line to me, and texts, just so you know. All right, so we are working on that. And like I said, we may add more and more to the website as we go along. So if you have any questions or comments about that, let me know what needs worked on. Some people found some bugs that I went and addressed immediately, so I appreciate you guys doing that for me. All right, so this morning's sermon, we were actually talking quite a little bit about the subject matter this morning in our Bible study and before church. But several people here, we were talking about recent events, and a lot of the events have generated a surprising amount of negativity concerning us being patriots to America or having patriotism. I don't understand it, really. But anyway, you kind of, especially with July being having our nation's birthday, the 4th of July, of course. And if you really think about it, the 4th of July is directly linked to Thanksgiving. If you guys really think about that, we'll look at that later. But anyway, on the 4th of July, and I'm a pretty big fan of America. I'm glad I'm here. We could be born somewhere else, but I'm glad we're here, or North America, I guess. You could say North America, the Canadians too. But anyway, on 4th of July, I fly a flag in my pickup truck, and it's actually the 13-star flag. You guys know what I'm talking about, this one? Okay, and I fly that one around, and surprisingly, I do get a lot of thumbs up. Get a lot of people honking at me, waving, thumbs up for that. I usually have it on Memorial Day, 4th of July, and then, of course, Veterans Day, I'll have that, and the Marine Corps flag, of course. But Anyway, I have actually had people, more than a handful, perhaps 10 or 12 people ask me, what is that flag and how many stars are on it? And these people are older than me, so I know they got it covered in social studies as well back in 5th grade. Anyway, that is the Betsy Ross flag. That's what that's called, okay? It was actually a request from the Continental Congress in 1777. It actually didn't make its appearance till 1790, okay? And Betsy Ross, she was actually a seamstress and upholsterer. She was commissioned to make the flag, all right? And that's not an actual picture. That's somebody's drawing of her. Just so you know, they didn't have Polaroids back in 1700s. And also, you'll see the 13-star flag. And it's a part of our history, so I was very surprised that Americans didn't know this. You know, and a lot of people were in parking lots. I looked at their plate, and they said Idaho. It wasn't British Columbia. So, you know, they should have known better that this is the Betsy Ross flag. That's the one I fly. It's the old school. Of course, the 13 is the 13 tribes or colonies, right? Okay, that's why I fly it. And of course, it's on the VA. If you go to the VA, it's on there as well. See, there's the original and there's the 13. Did you guys ever notice that? I know you guys go to the VA. You didn't notice? No? All right, and also we have the 5 stars for the 5 branches of the military. Come on, guys. That would be the Marine Corps, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard. And you'll notice here that we have a golden braid. Yes, the Coast Guard made it. And we have a Navy or a braid here showing sacrifice. Okay, so yeah, even the Betsy Ross flag is on another national symbol, the Department of Veterans Affairs, just so you know. But I was surprised at the amount of people that asked me about this flag. It wasn't flying upside down or anything like that. It was just this flag because it's the original. And I thought that was appropriate for this year. So yes, I fly a flag. I'm proud of it. We have a flag here behind the pulpit. I know you can only ever see the bottom of it for the YouTube, but yeah, we have a flag here in America's Promise. And it's appropriate that we have one considering the church's name is America's Promise. But I digress. All right, anyway, there seems to be a fair rise of anti-patriotism and anti-America, which I can only call propaganda, flying around. You know, and it's actually caught on with Christians, and disturbingly a lot of kingdom Christians. And I know we've gone over where Zion is. All right. So I see a lot of it, and particularly on social media. And it seems to be an effort by Christians, to convince other Christians to not love this country as a nation and as a people. It's coming from other Christians. All right, now usually it stems from the modern churches preaching the false doctrine of the rapture. Generally, that's where that anti-land, anti-America is coming from. So in other words, they don't really care about this land. It's not their home. They're just passing through. Right? That's generally why you won't see anybody that has a love for the land. You know, now kingdom Christians understand these things. At least they should. If you don't, you'll understand it by the end of this morning. Because other Christians have been taught to think of only of heaven as it's preached in the churches. And they'll say, well, let the world go to pot. I'm leaving anyway. Right? So I think that stems a lot. And in the kingdom circles, it's not so much that the rapture doctrine is being preached or it's even believed in kingdom circles, because it's really not. Everybody knows the rapture is a false doctrine in the kingdom circles. But by and large, the anti-patriotism, the anti-America negativity, it really comes from who's in the Oval Office. They complain about who's the president or who's the president-elect or things like that. And I get phone calls, emails, probably texts when I put the number online. But there's people, they'll call me up and they'll say, hey, look, Reed, you know, Biden's got a lot of this going on. He's got a lot of that going on. And then Trump, of course, you know, people are saying this about him. And, you know, he supports Israel and things like that. Really, and it doesn't matter who you're talking about in the Oval Office or in Congress or civil administrators. Generally speaking, all of the conversations just decay into America being bad and wrong and the president being bad and wrong and all that. Well, if you boil it all down, every conversation I've ever had about people with the State of the Union and stuff, especially when it comes to the president, is that the man who's running for president or the man who is president isn't perfect. That's all they're saying. And I have to remind them, you're right, he's just a human being. And we won't have somebody perfect running the country until the new millennium. So we're just going to have to take it as we go, right? So no, I'm sure if you go back to old Israel, Saul and the rest of the kings weren't perfect rulers of the country either. So Israel's never had a perfect king. So, right. So, and that's really all it is. It's 20, 30-minute conversations about this, and really all they're saying is the guy in office isn't perfect. I'm like, all right, I knew that. He's a human being. So, yeah, I know this stuff. And we're going to have to see if all this propaganda is even biblical. Not so much the government side of things. Okay, we're not going to preach about civil government and godly governments and stuff. There's about 200-300 sermons on the book of Romans about those in the Kingdom Circle. It's a tired old sermon. Okay, give unto Caesar and all that, right? Government's established by God. We're not going there this morning. Their conclusions generally, if you read it, and all the ones about government, how bad government is. Now, we're not Seventh-day Adventists. We don't think that America is the little horn of the Antichrist, do we? Okay, all right. So really, when they're talking about government and how bad that is, it's the same thing as the government, as the Trump people or the Biden people. No, the government's not perfect. We won't have a perfect government until that new city, right? So yeah, I've heard it. I've studied it out. So anyway, we're not going to the government side of things. We're not going to talk about how bad the president is just because he's a mortal man like the rest of us. Most of it's armchair quarterbacking like we were talking about this morning. So if you don't like the president, my suggestion is this: run for office yourself. Now that would be something. Then maybe I'd listen. Anyway, so hating and complaining about our land, is it biblical? Well, Paul says the Old Testament scriptures were what? Written for our learning. Upon whom? Upon whom the end of the ages have come. Right? So let's see what the old scriptures say. We're going to go all the way back to Exodus chapter 3 this morning. Now, this is the chapter that has God appearing to Moses in the burning bush, if you'll recall. We'll go to Exodus 3:6. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. All right, next verse. I'm sorry, that was 3 and that was chapter 3, 6 and 7. Here's Exodus chapter 3, verse 8. And I am come down to deliver them, the children of Israel, of course, out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And you'll notice he's listing the people that currently live in the land God intends to give the children of Israel. All right. And notice he says that the deliverance of Israel out of Egypt involves what? Bringing them out of the land of their enemies and into a new land. Right? And of course, we know that new land would be a land of their own, where they wouldn't move. They'd be a settled population, right? It's one of the biggest blessings Israel could have asked for. And you'll notice that God's actions, of course, here in delivering his people did not involve teaching them nice things about a secret rapture either. Okay, you'll notice that. And in order to get their mind off the trouble they're in the land of Egypt, he didn't say that. And he didn't teach them anarchy and ways to overthrow Pharaoh either. Did he? No. No, none of that. Deliverance would be putting Israel into a land of their own, a new land. All right? Looks at Exodus chapter 23 now, verses 14 and 15. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat the unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed in the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Okay, so this feast that he mentions here was to celebrate the bringing of the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, of course. All right? Verse 16, and the feast of the harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and in the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. You guys know these feasts, right? All right. The first fruits involves the law of tithes, Of course, we know that. And of course, that's God's portion, and that is what allows God's ministers to carry out God's work upon the earth. Really, that's what that's for. And if you think about it, it's a good thing God instituted the first fruits, tithes, because if Israel didn't give to their ministers, who else would carry out God's work upon the earth? Would we be able to rely on the heathen to carry this out? No. It's only because of this law and this feast here, Israel's ministers are given what they need to go out and preach God into the earth, the good news of the gospel of the kingdom, right? So God was setting us up for that here at this feast. And of course, what comes out of Israel's land is what gets God's work out. You see? Okay. And of course, the third feast is the Feast of Ingathering, which we know as Thanksgiving. Okay, there's that Thanksgiving again. Now notice here, you may not have noticed this before, but all three feasts, 1, 2, and 3, all three feasts have something to do with the land. All of them. Okay? So we have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which was the giving of a new land to Israel after they left Egypt. We have the feast, the tithe, right? First fruits, which is what the land produced. And we have the Feast of Ingathering, which was thanking God for our land. Right? Did you guys ever notice that before about those feasts? Okay. So let's go to Leviticus 25 now. This is the law covenants. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. This is a title deed, really, naming God as the sole authority, the sole owner of the land, right? So the land of Israel is not owned by Israel. Therefore, it is not theirs to sell. Okay? Now look at verse 24 through 28. I know this is small. I'll read them to you. We'll go slow. Leviticus 25, verses 24 through 28. And in all the land of your possession ye shall grant a redemption for the land. If thy brother be waxen poor and has sold away some of his possession, and any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. And if the man have none to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the overplus to the man to whom he sold it, that he may return unto his possession. But if he is not able to restore it to him, then that which is sold shall remain in the hand of him that hath bought it until the year of Jubilee, and in the Jubilee it shall go out, and he shall return it unto his possession. Okay, we understand all that legal jargon, right? Okay, what are we reading about here? First, the land shall not be sold forever. Okay, and that, of course, that means age long or until annihilation. Okay, if you go literally, which that makes... if you can't sell the land, that also makes property tax illegal, because that usurps God's authority of the land as well, if you think about that. And, okay, so first, you can't sell the land. Second, if a man became poor and sold his farm, and you notice, you're like, Reed, well, you can't sell it, but you're talking about selling it here, sold it away, right? Well, it's not that he's selling it, it's he's leasing or renting the land out. Okay? All right. And a kinsman could redeem the land and restore it all at once to him. That's what that law is for. Third, you'll see if the owner had no relatives or no relatives capable of redeeming the land for him, and he earned enough for himself to do it, he could calculate the years remaining until the Jubilee and pay the buyer for the years that the lease remained. Okay, so that's what that one's saying. And fourth, if the owner had no money to buy back the land at all, it would still revert to him after the seven Sabbath years. Okay, 7 Sabbath years, the Jubilee year, right? Okay. So this is basic to Bible law on land, possession, and this is also Bible tax law. Bible tax law. And you're like, well, Bible tax law, but if we go to the Bible, we don't pay taxes. Well, overthrowing Caesar, Pharaoh, Nebuchadnezzar, or Mystery Babylon doesn't get you out of taxes. I'm sorry to break it to you. Okay? Exodus 30 tells us about a head tax or poll tax, which was the same amount no matter who you were, everyone paid the same amount. All men, men only, aged 20 and over. And it was collected by the civil authorities. Okay, so yes, there's a poll tax. And then technically, if you think about it, tithe is God's tax. Technically, tithe is a tax. So again, our government isn't perfect. And that makes it a judgment and chastisement from God. Okay, yes, you're like, Reed, if we could only go back to the way things were. We're not going to go back to the way things were. We're moving forward towards the kingdom. And there is going to be perfect government and a perfect head of state and all that, right? We've appointed ourselves one head, right? Okay, so anyway, yes, I know the government's not perfect. It will be one day. I know the president isn't perfect. We'll have a civil ruler's perfect one day. For now, we've got what we got because we're under Mystery Babylon because we messed around and found out. All right? We did. Okay, now I would also advise reading this book. It's called, and I know you probably can't see it, it's called America's Ultimate Weapon by Hans Miller. Okay, we actually have 2 duplicates of this in the bookstore right now. So if you have, if you want to read about this one is excellent. We have 2 duplicates, one of them which is one I'm holding right now. Okay, so we do have those. It's good. It's a good read because it tells you about what the land would be like if we actually instituted God's laws here. Okay, yeah. So this is what America would be, what we could be if we applied God's laws, all of them. You know, and it's almost a utopia, which is the way it was, the Garden of the Lord. We're not going to get that until He returns, but the effect of God's law, the positive effect of God's law upon America is what the book's talking about. America's Ultimate Weapon is putting God's laws into practice. That's what it is. It's an excellent book. It also has several chapters concerning land laws, just like this. Okay, so it's a good read. Anyway, God is the landowner, period. And our disobedience to this has caused much trouble for us in this land to the point of us being dispossessed of it. Dispossessed of it, all right? And trouble in our land, speaking of which, is a direct result of, as a direct result of our disobedience. Some other cases of that would be not only do we sell our land, right? We do that. This is illegal. We don't keep land Sabbaths. They don't keep land Sabbaths, which are Bible law. Now, there are people that attend the church that actually keep land Sabbaths at their homes and their farms, and they're immensely blessed for it. Okay, naturally. And here's another one. Numbers 35, verse 30 and 31. Whoso killeth any person, the murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses, but one witness shall not testify against the person to cause him to die. Notice, this is a serious case here. There has to be 2 witnesses before you can put someone to death. Moreover, you shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death, but he shall surely be put to death. Take satisfaction. Take satisfaction. It's not about being happy about the fact that he got put to death. Okay, what it means is you don't take a settlement. Okay, you don't take imprisonment instead of death. You don't take money instead of the death penalty. You take no other means of restoration except for the death penalty. You take no satisfaction for the life, you see? Because the murderer must be put to death, period. Verse 32 is actually about accidental killings or manslaughter, all right, and cities of refuge. We're going to go to verse 33 and 34. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein you are. So, in other words, if you do what the verses previous say, put murderers to death, you will not pollute the land wherein you are. For the blood, it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. You see, murderers put to death. Defile not therefore the land which ye shall inhabit, wherein I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the children of Israel. Now that's a double prophecy. What land are they going into? Well, Canaan land, the promised land, milk and honey, right? But then also God's talking to the children of Israel, who are ourselves, of course. And he's saying, in the land that I gave you, this North American continent, when you don't put down people that are murderers, you will pollute the land, and not only that, you defile God's dwelling place. Because God dwells with the children of Israel. So this is serious stuff. All right. And of course, like I said, this may just be skipped over for New Testament Christians because, oh, Canaan land. Well, we understand this is happening in our nation now. Right there, all the way back. All right, now let's go to Psalm 106. Actually, Psalm 106 is a history of our people. We're not going to read the whole thing this morning. We're going to go to Psalm 106, verse 34 through 38. They, our forefathers, of course, they did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them, but were mingled among the heathen and learned their works. We just had J.D. Vance's Hindu wife give a prayer to her God at the RNC, right? Mingling with the heathen, praying to their gods. All right. And they served their idols. Okay. Now this is old Canaan land. This has nothing to do with our nation today. Right? Okay. Learn their works, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and daughters unto devils. That would be most all of the doctrines being taught in non-denominational modern churches, right? Well, Baptist churches, whatever. And our schools, we send them there, unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and their daughters. Illegal wars, and of course the abortion issue, which is legal in almost every state. Nation's capital is one of them. Whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. Now that's only talking about the old Jewish forefathers in Canaan land, right? No, this is our history, our forefathers, our old land, and our land today, right? This is end time prophecy all of a sudden in the middle of Psalms. So, this is another way in which the land is polluted, mingling with the heathen and doing it their way, allowing it in our nation. So we're told not to do. All right? And as you read more and more of the histories in the Old Testament about old Israel, you'll find that they defiled the old land to the extent that God actually cast them out of it. Didn't he? Okay. Let's look at that. Jeremiah chapter 2, verses 5 through 7. Thus saith the Lord, what iniquity have your fathers found in me, that they are gone far from me, and neither have they have walked after vanity and become vain. Neither said thee, where is the Lord that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, that led us through the wilderness, through a land of deserts and of pits, through the land of drought and of shadow of death, through a land that no man passed through, and where no man dwelt. And I brought you into a plentiful country, to eat the fruit thereof and the goodness thereof. But when ye entered, ye defiled my land and made mine heritage an abomination. Okay. So that's a valid question God's asking here, is it not? Now, notice, it's not pointing the blame directly to, Jeremiah is not calling out the people and their actions directly. He's talking about this started a long time ago. Your fathers. You see, and God's saying, what if these people found wrong with me, that they would turn around and worship something else? The implication being that they did find a fault with God and they are currently worshiping something else. And notice here, the benefits and blessings that God gave us are physical, all right? Physical blessings, earthly blessings, not heavenly ones. All right. And that's another far cry from what the churches of today preach. You won't hear them preach about physical blessings. And God lists them over and over and over. You know, here, we don't even think to thank God for our own land. All you hear anymore from Christians is them bad-mouthing it. And yet it's a very important part of Israel's heritage. Now, I know what I've been reading up to this point has been nothing but negativity, and I was just talking about how negative everybody can be. But this is our history, right? In our prophecy, we're going to actually look at prophecy next week. But if we consider our history and that the prophecy fits our land in a precise manner, the solution, of course, then is to what? Well, repent and get online biblically as a people, right? However, how many churchgoers, if they realized that God could rebuke us the same way that he rebuked Judah, our forefathers, what happened if God did that? If God told us, you will leave America and never come back, you will leave this land forever, people would start thanking God for the land that he brought our ancestors to, wouldn't they? I think so. And look at what it says. Neither did they say such and so. Right? Our people are being taught not even to consider these blessings anymore. That thank God for the land he gave us through our forefathers, the pilgrims. And we'll go through that a little bit here. So, people aren't being taught to thank God for our land because either of two things, really. Because either they despise the earth because they're conditioned to be looking for a future home somewhere else, right? Or they've been so ingrained with negative propaganda, which is, like I said earlier, just really boils down to our nation not being perfect for whatever reason. And they wouldn't even consider the land anymore as a gift God gave us. You see? So it's either they don't really care about the land because it's not their home, they're just passing through, or all this negativity concerning our nation and our people and stuff makes it to where they don't even think about it being a gift from God in the first place. So anyway, let's get to the good news then. Jeremiah 3, verse 17 and 18. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, the name of the Lord to Jerusalem, neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. In those days the house of Judah shall walk at the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given you for an inheritance unto your fathers. Now what's going on here? This is end-time prophecy concerning the uniting of Israel and Judah being taken out of the land of their enemies and brought into a new land. What new land? This land, the one everyone's bad-mouthing. This land. So here we are again, and of course it's like the manner unto Egypt. Isn't that what the prophecies always talk about? Israel's deliverance will be after the manner of Egypt. Here it is. This is what we're talking about when we say these things. One day there will be a new city and a new country. The nations will look up to them, who? Israel and Judah, because they will have a new land. There will be saved Christians in that land, and the land will be to the north of the land I've given you. And in Bible prophecy, end-time prophecy, cardinal directions are always taken literally. Now, where did the Israelites move when they left? North. Europe. Okay. So, after this judgment, God would move his people north to a new land, and they would come to know him once again after a time. Right? Okay. The pleasant land then is what? God's gift. A future goodly heritage. For who? National Israel. Physical land now. It's giving us a physical land with physical blessings. You see, we're taught not to look for those anymore because that's the old Jewish stuff. It's the Jew section of the Bible. It's not. The physical land was a blessing and an inheritance to his children. It's a covenant. You can't go anywhere in the Bible without reading that Israel's heritage was land upon the earth. You can't really go anywhere in the covenants without it. Let's go to Jeremiah 22. I'm going to read these verses 1 through 10. Thus saith the Lord, go down to the house of the king of Judah and speak this word. Okay, now notice, Jeremiah is not addressing the people of Judah now. Where is he gone? Straight to the king. Straight to the king, and say, hear the word of the Lord, O king of Judah, that sittest upon the throne of David, thou and thy servants, and thy people that enter in by these gates. Thus saith the Lord, execute ye judgment and righteousness, and deliver the spoiled out of the hand of the oppressor, and do no wrong, do no violence to the stranger, the fatherless, nor the widow, neither shed innocent blood in this place. Notice the direction Jeremiah is giving the king. For if ye do this thing indeed, then shall there enter in by the gates of this house kings sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots and on horses, he and his servants and his people. All right, so the nation will be blessed. But if ye do not hear these words, I swear by myself, saith the Lord, that this house shall become a desolation. For thus saith the Lord unto the king's house of Judah, Thou art Gilead unto me, and the house of Lebanon, yet surely I will make thee a wilderness, and cities which are not inhabited. And I will prepare destroyers against thee, every one with his weapons, and they shall cut down thy choice cedars, and cast them into the fire. And many nations shall pass by this city, and they shall say every man to his neighbor, Wherefore hath the Lord done thus unto this great city? Then they shall answer, Because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God, and worshipped other gods, and served them. Weep ye not for the dead, neither bemoan him, but weep sore for him that goeth away, for he shall return no more, nor see his native country. All right. So Jeremiah's words to the king. That's what we just read. So in other words, he went straight to Capitol Hill, D.C., right? And he spoke to the civil leader of the nation, and the cabinet, and the congressmen, and the civil administrators of the government. Isn't that who Jeremiah is addressing? And I wonder what we would do today if the civil leaders in our government were told these things. All right? Anyway, he told them to get rid of all the corruption and the sin and the violence, and if they did that, God would establish that nation. Right? But if they did not hearken to God's words of warning, what happens? Desolation and destruction would ensue. Why? What was the reason? Because they had forsaken the covenant. Forsaken the covenant. And notice verse 10. Weep ye not for the dead, neither bemoan him, but weep sore for him that goeth away, for he shall return no more, nor see his native country. Apparently, being ejected from the land was a fate worse than death. The removal of Israel from their land was a severe, perhaps the most severe, punishment and judgment. And you read our history, it really was. It's always the last thing God did. And apparently here, you're supposed to weep more for the man that cannot return to his own nation than even for the dead, you see. So what would our people do? Once again, if they were forced to leave America and told they could never come back, where would they go? What would they do? Right? Apparently, they can never return home to your native country. Weep sore for them. So thinking God, instead of reviling our country, is starting to make a little more sense now, isn't it? I think so. All right, you may say, well, God won't exile us from North America, Pastor Reed. That's part of the covenant. And it is. You're right. He told us we would come to a land that was our own and we would not be removed off of it. He said that, right? Nor would we have to worry about afflictions from old enemies. What he means is that we would not have to worry about invasions and takeovers. Okay, so that's what he's talking about when he's talking about that covenant with us. You're right. He will not take us out of this land like he did in times before. But like what we read in the land laws, do we really have claim to the land anymore? Have we, in disobeying the Sabbath laws, just those, and buying and selling, been dispossessed of our own land? Right. And what is being removed out of the land except being dispossessed of it? Right? Do we, as the recipients of God's gift of this land, actually hold the ability to control it? Nope. He gave that over to who? Well, destroyers, everyone with his weapons, that'll cut down thy choice cedars and cast them into the fire. Choice cedars are what we need to live and build with. Our resources are going somewhere else, and here it's right into the fire. It's just wasted. Now remember, that's not anything to do with this North American continent, is it? Jeremiah wasn't talking to us. All right? And of course, we don't control our land. Of course, by control, where we do not have dominion. We are to be dominion Christians in God's land. Do we have dominion in this land? As God's people, as a nation, as a people. Do we have authority? No. Do we have sovereignty? That's not being removed from the land? Right? Okay. Now, we've been dispossessed of it by aliens, strangers, heathen, mystery Babylon, all of which are judgments, chastisements. And remember, God chastises those whom he loves. So even the chastising is something we should actually be thankful that God cares enough about us to even do that in the first place. And I said this morning before church started. What would we do if God stopped chastising America and went over and started chastising China? Right? No? Okay. He's chastising us on account of our people forsaking the covenant. What covenant? Well, there's a few of them. But one of which you'd have to think of the Mayflower Compact. Right? Okay. So instead of Christians being taught to thank God for the land we have, instead of being taught to thank God for that, they're being told that the best thing that could ever happen to them is to actually leave America. The gift God gave us by other Christians, shockingly. On account of what? Well, having a leader that's not 100% perfect, I guess, or having a government that's run by somebody else and that's not perfect. Though none of those things shock me, by the way, right? Did it shock you? Did Israel have any perfect kings in the Israel days of old? When we were in obedience, we had some pretty good kings, didn't we? When we were in disobedience, we had some pretty nasty kings, didn't we? Now, why would that be any different for us here and now as the same people? Patterns, shadows, types. When Israel gets back to the Bible, they were blessed with good and plenty, and good and fair and just leaders. When they forsook the covenant, God made sure that he put a bad president in the Oval Office, didn't he? God made sure of that. Why? Because God picks who sits in that chair. God chooses who sits in the throne of David. He did. There's a whole covenant about it. So, and you know, our forefathers, what did they do? If you read the Mayflower Compact, you guys are familiar with that, right? You know that they came to America to live for what? The advancement of the Christian faith and the glory of God. So our forefathers, like what we were reading about earlier, right, come together. So they gathered around something. And in the prophecies, it was told that Israel and Judah would one day, we'll go over this next week, one day Israel and Judah would gather around an ensign, a banner, and they would leave their land and come to a new land. Right? Now you read the Mayflower Compact, that's exactly what they did. They could not worship God the way that God was to be worshiped in Europe. They left that land, came to a new one, just to do what? Establish the Christian faith for the glory of God. The advancement of the Christian faith. So the greatest thing they could do was move out of their land into this land. The land God gave them. We'll learn in the prophecies that God actually made a way for them to get out of that place. He even controlled the oceans, making sure they had safe passage. It's in the prophecies. It's a little hidden, but we'll get there next week, all right? So don't buy into all the other stuff you see and you read and you hear. Stay in God's word, and if you do that, you'll realize the significance and the glory of God's land. And in that land, his purposes for his people and his kingdom. That's all we have for this morning.